So if you haven't seen part one of this two-part video series, you should probably go watch that first to put this in context. I'm going to read the last section of um, chapter 10 of Whitehead's Adventures of Ideas. The chapter is called The New Reformation. It begins, "There remains for discussion one final question. I wish to emphasize the importance that, amid many divergencies of interpretation, the leaders of religious thought should today concentrate upon the Christian tradition, and more particularly upon its historical origins. In the case of the more conservative schools of thought, such advice is, of course, unnecessary, and indeed impertinent. But it is a question for discussion why the more radical schools should not cut entirely free from any appeal to the past, and concentrate entirely upon the contemporary world and contemporary examples. The summary answer is that, insofar as such an appeal to tradition can be made with complete honesty, without any shadow of evasion, there is an enormous gain in popular effectiveness. In other words, he's saying contemporary theologians should not just, try to completely modernize their discourse by appealing to the facts as they are today. They should draw upon, the deep well of wisdom lying dormant in the historical narrative of this tradition, and that if they can tap into that, the sort of archetypal ground of this collective mythos that the West has been telling itself and dramatizing on the world stage for thousands of years, then it can transform us, at a deep emotional, moral, psychological level. Whereas if theology starts trying to provide a kind of existential um, redemption of the modern mechanistic, materialistic, scientific picture of the universe. If the theologian just says, well, your soul is gonna melt away with your body, but culturally, like you can attain immortality. If you make a name for yourself or something, if people remember you in the future, then you will have, in that respect, gained the only kind of immortality that's possible, but still a valuable kind. Um, Whitehead saying, no, do not seed, he's saying to theology and religion, do not cede the cosmos, the nature of the universe, to the scientist in order to try to, um, preserve your authority for the moral guidance of the soul, the human soul. You have to cosmologize your religion and historicize it also, and these are not separate issues. The cosmos is a process of historical development, just like the human being. History, in other words, is not a merely human contrivance. What we understand to be human history, I guess it began when we started writing it down, maybe, but who's to say that the story is not yet written down prior to the beginning of history, weren't also, in some sense, part of an unfolding, developing process that had some underlying rationality, some underlying reason or cause. If causality is anything, it's historical, from top to bottom. And Whitehead wants us, if we're going to engage religion as relevant to our modern situation, which clearly he thinks it is, and I also think it is, and with a thinker like Deleuze, um, religion isn't irrelevant either. He thinks that there are religious motifs that can supercharge immanence, and by maybe verbally seeming to worship transcendence, that worship in fact inspires a belief in the world, in the transcendence of the world itself, in the way that life can become a sort of self-immolating ecstasy, self-sacrificial giving of oneself as an act of love over to the larger creative world of which you are a part. I think Deleuze is ultimately describing something like that, a kind of artistic way of life where your work of art is yourself. And the beauty that you seek is the beauty of um, sympathy and community and intensity of beauty. And beauty is always something that's shared between bodies, right? Beauty is never internal to yourself. That's what Deleuze is seeking, and that's what Whitehead is seeking too. Um, they're both aesthetic thinkers. It's aesthetics as first philosophy. It's the sensory and the affective, feeling, sensation and feeling that are at the base of our knowledge of not only our knowledge of the world but the being of the world itself. It's all little perceptions, as Leibniz would say, drops of experience, as William James put it, or um, you know, actual occasions in Whitehead's terms. Um, I was gonna. I grabbed this book when I started talking about Deleuze. It's just published a couple months ago. Joshua Ramy. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but it's on Deleuze and the Hermetic tradition and Deleuze's philosophy as a kind of spiritual practice, initiatory practice, in fact. So actually, let's finish this chapter. Uh, Whitehead writes, civilization is constituted out of four elements. 1. Patterns of behavior. 2. Patterns of emotion. 3. Patterns of belief. And 4. Technologies. We can at once dismiss technologies as beyond our topic, although all four constitutive elements interact upon each other. Also, patterns of behavior are in the long run sustained or modified by patterns of emotion and belief. It is the primary business of religion to concentrate upon emotion and belief. Now, so far as concerns beliefs of a general character, it is much easier for them to destroy emotion than to generate it. In any survey of the adventure of ideas, nothing is more surprising than the ineffectiveness of novel general ideas to acquire for themselves an appropriate emotional pattern of intensity. Profound flashes of insight remain ineffective for centuries, not because they are unknown, but by reason of dominant interests which inhibit reaction to that type of generality. The history of religion is the history of the countless generations required for interest to attach itself to profound ideas. For this reason, religions are so often more barbarous than the civilizations in which they flourish. This faintness of impress of general ideas upon the human mind has another effect. It is difficult even for acute thinkers to understand the analogies between ideas expressed in diverse phraseologies and illustrated by different sorts of examples. Disparate intellectual battles have been fought by philosophers who have expressed the same idea in different ways. For both these reasons, if you want to make a new start in religion based upon ideas of profound generality, you must be content to wait 1,000 years. Religions are like species of animals. They do not originate from special creations. Finally, if there be any truth in the contention that dogmatic finality of verbal expression is a mistaken notion, there is an enormous advantage in keeping together, with common modes of procedure, religious opinions of analogous types. They can learn from each other, borrow from each other, and individuals can make imperceptible transitions. Above all, they can learn to understand each other and to love. Must religion always remain a synonym for hatred? The great social ideal for religion is that it should be the common basis for the unity of civilization. In that way, it justifies its insight beyond the transient clash of brute forces. This discussion has concentrated upon three culminating phases: the thought of Plato, the life of Christ, and the first formative period of Christian theology. But this whole period of 12 centuries, with its legendary antecedents and its modern successors, is required to complete the tale of the Christian religion. The story is wholly concerned with the interplay of ideas belonging to different levels of insight. The religious spirit is always in process of being explained away, distorted, and buried. Yet since the travel of mankind towards civilization, it is always there. The task of theology is to show how the world is founded on something beyond mere transient fact, and how it issues in something beyond the perishing of occasions. The temporal world is the stage of finite accomplishment. We ask of theology to express that element in perishing lives which is undying by reason of its expression of perfections proper to our finite natures. In this way we shall understand how life includes a mode of satisfaction deeper than joy or sorrow. So that's Whitehead. Um, I'll have a link posted to the paper that I'm working on about Deleuze and Whitehead shortly, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about what I've outlined in these videos here. Thanks for listening.